Welcome back everyone, Robert Marzullo here from Ramp Studio Comics. So today's video I'll be working through this piece right here and talking to you about the process and some of the decisions I make as I create this type of art. I'll be using the iPad Pro and Procreate to make this. And also there's a new pose pack that I'm creating on my Gumroad. You can check that out. It's just starting out, but I'll be adding poses like these to it if you need a good resource for your comic book hero poses. So without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump on in. So the first part of this is, obviously the idea stage. I'm trying to figure out what kind of scene I want to see here. So I wanted a fight scene. I wanted to, show somebody punching the crap out of somebody else, and that's really all I had going into it. Now, generally, you're going to have a script and a lot more conceptual information than that, but that's what I wanted to start with. But I wanted to really show like a twist in the hips of the character throwing the punch and really kind of stretch that pose. And then as far as the guy getting punched, I wanted to, you notice I started with just a face up close to camera, and that's kind of a typical kind of thing, but I wanted to push the depth of the scene a little bit further by having him foreshorten into the scene. So then I start to rough sketch as I get a better idea of where I want the body parts to go and kind of the pose. And keep in mind, this is by no means set in stone. You see I keep changing the legs here. I separate parts of it in layers so that I can turn one thing off and work on another thing without being so distracting. So whenever I work on a full scene, I'll use layers to my advantage that way. The other thing that helps, you'll see here in a bit, I'll start scaling down one character versus the other. And although that's pretty easy to do, even if there's all of it's drawn on one layer, it becomes really easy if you use layers to your advantage. So I had the tooth flying out towards camera just because it adds another dynamic and more depth to the scene. Also, I think it adds a touch of humor, which is always great. Same thing with the thwap. I get that in early on. Just keep in mind, whenever you do scenes that you're trying to fill up more of the scene, it's a good idea to rough in things like where you feel the special effects are going to go, the word balloons, the sound effects, things like that. Or I guess not special effects, sound effects is what I meant to say there. But, it's good to rough all that in so that you can place everything and get the composition going early on, because if not, you'll always have this mistake where you didn't leave enough room and you start covering up parts of your artwork that you didn't necessarily want to cover up. So now I'm starting to refine it a little bit more. So I've got a little bit better idea of what the scene should look like. I start thinking about the character's suit design. Now, had this been popular, iconic characters, I wouldn't have to think so much about that. Obviously, I could just look at reference and pull from that and draw their suits over, but I ended up making up these characters, and they're not too awfully well designed. It was just more, hey, I want them to look like superheroes or a superhero and a villain, and I need him to have some kind of look like that. And really, this was just some ideas, and pretty basic, as you can see, just some suit markings. I like to make parts of the suits look darker than other parts, but that's pretty common, so I don't think that requires any explanation. And I just start rendering away and trying to add a little bit more detail. Here you see me flip the screen, which is always important. Honestly, I probably should have been flipping the screen more early on. It helps you spot flaws in the anatomy and all kinds of things like symmetry, and if a part of the anatomy is kind of angled funny or whatever. So always flip your canvas. It's really helpful. If you're working traditionally, just hold it up in a mirror, things like that. And here I start to refine the other character. So I try to work on one character and then move over to the next. That doesn't always happen, but I try to get as much information, and I try to do it in passes. So, and again, this doesn't always happen entirely this way, but I'll do a pass over the entire character, whether it be line weight, and rendering. By rendering, I mean like cross hatching, stippling. That's all kind of rendering in my my definition or whatever. And or I might just go through and do all the shapes of shadows first, but I try to do it a little bit in passes. Like, you'll see I try not to render, like, say, the whole arm of the character and then go and do the other arm and, so on and so forth, because what I think will happen there is if you spot any large mistakes, you'll totally have to scrap it and you waste an absorbent amount of time. So I try to work in passes is what I'm getting at whenever I do this type of stuff. And the more complex the scene creation, the more that I think that'll save you time and make your drawing more effective. So yeah, and the other thing is I was going for a little bit more of a cartoony kind of fun feel on this, not so dark and ominous or whatever. So keep that in mind that, generally I might even use more rendering lines or kind of a darker effect to the rendering lines than you see here. But I wanted to keep kind of a fun, friendly feel, animated feel, I guess, to the scene. So when I do that, I try to use a little bit less rendering and a little bit more kind of a cleaner look, I guess, is what I shoot for. Because typically if you over render, it'll start to make the scene and the presence a little bit darker. So here, just adding a quick frame, just so I could break the panel border, which you're probably not supposed to do, but I do it because it's fun and I like it. But so I have them coming out of the scene a little bit, which I feel always helps to push that depth. And then here I start to sketch in a pretty crude background. And then I use the perspective tools, guides tools, whatever, inside of Procreate, which are, let me just say, fantastic. Just because they are. They're amazing. They're like some of my favorite perspective tools. Manga Studio obviously has the most powerful perspective guides, but these ones really work effectively for sketching quickly. There's just something about them. They work really well. And that's all I'll say about that. But anyways, so I rough it in really crude, and then I throw in those guides, and I start to clean it up. And you'll notice the background isn't nearly as refined, but it's there. I could have went with just some quick motion lines, and it would have still got the job done, but it wouldn't have told you where these characters were. It wouldn't have gave you this that narrative, that storytelling that you need. So it's good to throw in some kind of background. They don't have to be complex. It'll kind of happen naturally over time. I get all these questions on the channel about backgrounds. Just do them. Just get in there and do them. And over time, they'll get a little bit better. And you can see this one's not great, but it tells the story. It gets it done. You tell they're on a rooftop somewhere, duking it out. Motion lines wouldn't have told you that. Motion lines would have still gave it an impact and a visual, a better visual aid than just a white background. But it wouldn't have told you anything, other than, he's getting punched in the face and he just lost his tooth, which totally sucks. But, so at any rate, that's kind of the idea here, just another fight scene, another action scene. And there's going to be more of these because I've had a lot of requests for these. And I get it. Like a lot of times on this channel, I'll jump on here and I'll do some static poses. And you got to mix it up. You got to have a little of everything to do a comic, to do a storyboard or whatever you're working on. So I'm actually excited to do more of these for you because I think they're highly effective and important. And also keep in mind, once again, that you can get poses like these will be in my pose pack on my Gumroad, so be sure to check that out. There'll be a link in the description box below. So as always, I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching this, and let me know what you'd like to see in the future, and that's what I'll get on the list. Keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon.